Hello, Josh. Thanks very much for joining me on the show.
Yeah, man, Karl, it's so good to be seeing you again. This is awesome. It's a true honor to be here with you.
No, we had a wonderful conversation. You were kind enough to ask me on your show, the Mental Golf podcast, which I know is really popular in the States, and we covered a lot of ground. But I thought it'd be fantastic to get you back, because especially want to talk about practice tonight and how people can practice
Mm.
better in the winter time and into next year. But for those folks who perhaps don't know you over here and in Europe, Josh, just fill in some paint a bit of a picture of what brought you to this point and your golfing career today.
Yeah, that's appreciate it. Again, thank you for having me here. I guess if I could give it in just a handful of bullet points, it would be I started playing golf when I was 12. I was recruited and played at a Division 1 college golf program. Then all the while with a goal of turning pro right out of college.
Right.
And that did not happen. I was not good enough to turn pro right out of college. So I moved back in with my parents after college and kind of just I went it alone. I didn't have an instructor from the time I started college to about 3 years out. So for about 7 years, I didn't have an instructor. I was just kind of throwing stuff at the wall, trying to figure it out. But I was plateauing and floundering, not really knowing what I was doing. So eventually, I threw in the towel and I said, "Okay, I don't know what I'm doing. I need to find an instructor." So I found my instructor, Robert Limville, close by. It was about 30 minutes for me. Really, really good instructor. And he and I went to work on practice planning to what you said that you primarily want to talk about. That was one of the biggest things that we changed, but also kind of a better mental approach to the game, setting aside results and focusing more on process and basic swing stuff too. So we did that and I dove into that. And after about a year of extremely diligent, hard work, focused, boring, hard, difficult practice, I started to get results and I won a couple of kind of regional tournaments. And then I made it to the finals of the US Mid Amateur in 2017. And in the middle of that tournament, I I was jumping from hotel to hotel after each successive match that I'd won, and I have to play again tomorrow. And I said, I don't, if this is what the kind of mini tour grind is, or the grind to being a professional is, I don't want this. I don't want to be away from my then girlfriend at the time, who turned out to be my is now my wife, and family, and just being away from home. I just don't want to do this all the time. So at the height of my golf career, I decided to step away from playing golf as a career. And I asked Robert, my instructor, okay, well, if this is not going to be my job, I need a job. So can you help me figure something out? And he said, the way that you improved mentally, I think you could help other people improve mentally. So he gave me a handful of his players and said, here, let's experiment and try this out.
Right.
And I worked with some of them, and I guess it was good enough for at least one or two of them. And so he gave me some more players. They started recommending other players. And at the time, I also started the Mental Golf Show podcast. So from there, those two things kind of slowly grew. And that's been 5 or 6 years now to where I am now, working with players all over the world, kind of like what I understand you do, and doing the podcast. So you and I have a lot of similarities as far as what we currently do. Our pasts are nothing alike, from what I understand. But that's kind of the long story short on how I got to here.
But what I love about that is that you're helping people now from your own personal experiences. You've gone down that route, had some successes, some failures, found out what you did and you didn't like, and I think that's extremely valuable, isn't it? There's one route as maybe an academic route, but I think the personal, actual experience, I think players really resonate with that, don't they? Because they'll know that you've been in that situation that they're finding themselves in. I think what you said about
Yeah.
not enjoying or realizing that's not what you wanted in that in the competitive golfing sphere. I think that's so important for people to perhaps admit to themselves. It's not for everybody, is it? The life isn't is it sounds great and it looks great on TV when you're picking up millions of dollars and all the rest of it, but the actual reality of day-to-day experience is very, very different, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I was happy to have realized it at that point instead of okay, I was becoming a successful amateur golfer. Now let's turn pro. Let's set aside all this fun amateur opportunities, and now let's try to Monday qualify into stuff, which I had tried, but okay, let's really do it and let's sign up for pro tournaments and play against guys that are out driving me by 40 yards and hitting it higher and longer and making more putts. And just I could see myself losing the love of it. But I think the primary thing was I realized I was identifying with golf too much. I was becoming too tied up into golf.
Self-worth.
And that was, yeah, exactly. My self worth was entirely defined by golf.
Right.
And what my girlfriend at the time, wife now, helped me realize is there's way more to life than golf. And that's one of the most cliches that strongest cliches we've ever heard. But I had that realization and it helped me make a wise choice, a thoughtful choice, a not a I'm down and out and burnt out choice, but a this is awesome, but it's not who I want to be defined as.
And it's so easy to go down that route, isn't it? I think Raymond Pryor talks about tying self to craft, that that literally your whole
Yes.
identity, your whole value as a person's dependent on what it says on a
Mm.
scorecard. And I think that's such an important contribution to make us to players in the early years is if you can get them to understand that that's too much pressure for anybody to hold on to, isn't it? That if your worth is just dependent on what a golf ball does, it's walking a very, very thin tightrope all of the time, which is not much fun.
No, because golf is way too uncontrollable to base your feelings on your self-worth, your identity, your pride, whatever it is, how good you feel on a daily basis. It's way too much of a roller coaster to say when golf is up, I will be up, but when golf is down, I'm down. Well, prepare to be down a
Most of the
lot,
time.
especially if it's not just defined on like how good I practice, but on literally what did I shoot today or how did I finish in this tournament. There's a lot of good players out there it's going to make you feel like I'm worth nothing, right? I'm worth I'm 73rd on the list of how important I am, or and I was getting that way, right? Those are real thoughts of mine, and I'm glad, I'm blessed to have realized that was an extremely unhealthy relationship with the game.
I think for me, I remember many years ago, Tim Galway said that in the Inner Game books, he said that one of the things that's worth exploring is that you shatter the illusion, first of all, that it means anything, that you actually see the reality for what it is. And then once you
Mm.
shatter the illusion that it really means anything, you can recreate the illusion however you want. You can make it as important as you want, because we're not saying for 1 minute here that you shouldn't explore your capabilities and see how good you can be and be ultra competitive. But you can be ultra competitive and do all of those things from a different place, can't you? It's almost like you're expressing your capabilities rather than defining them.
Right.
It's very different, isn't it?
Yeah, you're defined by maybe more holistic values rather than finite results. So when I and actually what started to help turn the tide for me on my actual performance was back. I keep mentioning my girlfriend. Uh, at the time I met her, it was July of 2017. I should know that date, right? July. It was July
When
2017.
you're already
It's July
married, you've got to be
14th,
careful with the
2017.
references to your girlfriend. So you've got to...
True, right? It was the same person I'm with today.
Yeah.
Uh, the it was July 2017, and then I won I won a decent sized tournament that very week,
Right.
and then another bigger tournament the next month, and then 2 months later, almost won the U.S. Mid Am.
Right.
So her being introduced into my life had that very effect on it. Where as I was practicing and playing, I was able to, pour myself into it when I was there. But when I wasn't there, it was okay. That's that. I left that at the golf course.
Yeah.
And when I am there and I'm disappointed or I hit a bad golf shot, it doesn't rock me to my core anymore because my core is stronger now. And just the very fact of my life is not defined by this. There's more to life than this. So when this is bad, I'm still okay. That kind of shift in thinking, and it had an actual impact on my performance. It wasn't just making golf easier to quit. It actually helped me play better. So I think that's an important performance element for other people, is to let go of needing good results in order to get good results.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, a lot of the tools and techniques that anybody may or may not employ can be useful, but I think they're just window dressing unless you get to that deeper level of understanding some of these things, aren't they? Where you tie in yourself to the outcome in terms of score. But I want to drill into,
Mm.
I mean, it's a fascinating story with your coach. What did you do with, sorry, what was your coach's name again?
Robert Limville.
Robert.
He runs Precision Golf School here in North Carolina. Yeah.
Great. So when you started working with Robert, how did he help you initially in terms of the physical side of the game? What was his approach? Obviously, you were a good player when you came to him. How did he help you shape your game in terms of evolving your golf swing or your ability to take shots? What was his approach in that respect?
Yeah. So he's really good at um, taking a player's current ability and staying, keeping the elements of your game that are good and not trying to vastly change it to be like some other form. So he has his, I guess, philosophy. If he were to build a golfer, this is what he would do. But I'm not that golfer when I come to him. I'm my own person with my own past, with my own tendencies. So he has a really good way of saying, okay, what's your miss? Well, let's train you to be able to mitigate your miss.
Right.
And so if my miss is a thin shot off the heel, which it kind of always has been, he will say, okay, what are the things in my current swing that are causing that? And then what is a feeling change that we can make that will help you not do that? And it involved actual swing technical thing. Okay, we need to get your hands higher at the top and drop your hands down at the bottom instead of yanking it back inside and casting it over and whatever. So I did make actual technical changes, but it was never, okay, Josh is here and wants to get better, so we need to change his swing. It was, Josh's swing is causing these problems. So what can we do to change things to get rid of these recurring problems? And that was a really good, it was a much more sustainable way to be, instead of what I had always done and always thought was the right way to do it was, here's Tiger Woods' swing, make your swing look as much like his as possible.
Yeah.
And that's a fruitless effort because I'm not Tiger Woods. I'm not built like him. I'm more built like Rory McIlroy, but not even that, right? That's bringing Rory down to
We're
my
not built
level, and
like
that's not fair to
anybody
him.
else, are we? We're just a unique.
Exactly. That's the
unique,
point.
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's what Robert was really good at was, okay, let's take Josh as he is and try to work with that. Yeah.
And I love what you're saying there, that obviously Robert was, first of all, wanting to find out what your patterns were. as opposed to just being drawn into individual shots. What's the pattern that this guy has got when he misses a shot? Because I think that's what so many golfers miss is they react to individual shots and they don't look for patterns. Everybody after they've been
Mm,
playing the game for a few years has got patterns, and if you can just understand your pattern, you can manage that pattern then and really very quickly be very functional in terms of what you do on the golf course. But it always comes back to
yeah.
impact, Josh. I mean, if we're not looking at what's going on at impact, we're probably, well, not probably, we're in the wrong place.
Right. Yeah. He has all the tech that does that with
Mm,
TrackMan and Flight Scope and cameras and force plates and whatever. So he would use all of that info, and he's not a young guy. He's pretty well advanced in age, but he has always been really good at adapting to the latest
right.
technology and learning it and using it really well, and using 3D motion capture and stuff, crazy stuff that he's the expert, so he has learned how to do it well. But all of those things, it would be really easy to get caught up in all those numbers. We need to make your numbers do this, but it was okay, your miss has these numbers to it, so these numbers would represent a better shot. So what can we do to get to those numbers? So it was just a much more holistic way to get to the end result. Was a technical
Mm.
change, but that wasn't how we thought about it.
But there was a purpose to that, wasn't there? There was a purpose that technical
Yeah,
change was going to influence your patterns.
exactly. Yeah, it was Josh tends to do this. That gets Josh in trouble and is holding him back.
Mm.
So in order for Josh to get better, here's where we need to get, and this is probably how we're going to get there. And I think the biggest thing for me was I trusted Robert
Right.
fully.
Right.
He could tell me anything and I would just say, absolutely, let's do it. But that was part of my throwing in the towel,
Mm.
kind of giving up of my own control and saying, okay, I've tried this on my own for long enough and look where it's gotten me,
Mm.
kind of middling amateur golfer. So Robert, you know what you're doing. You've had really good results with players. You tell me what to do and I will just do it. And I don't care about results. I want you to help me become a better golfer. Like, that's all I care about. And results along the way will show us, okay, what are my stats? Where do I need to continue to improve? Let's use those stats to influence our practice. Okay, your driving is you're still losing 2 shots around driving and whatever.
Mm.
So we'd use all that to say, okay, you're not there yet. Let's keep practicing and keep working on your game, and we'll monitor it as we go.
Mm. Mm. So it sounds like there was a technical element to the work that you did with Robert to fix impact, but it also sounds like you really looked at the way you practice from a performance
Mm.
perspective. Give me a flavor of what that looks like, Josh, or how you worked on that. How did you develop the kind of performance side of your training?
Yeah. So back to the difference between who I was before Robert and then after was I would all my practice would be block practice, would be rake and hit the ball, just stand there in the same place, working on my swing, film 20 swings every range session to, okay, am I doing this exact thing correctly compared to Tiger?
Mm.
And it was just, that was literally what I'm not exaggerating. That was literally what I was doing. And so it wouldn't have been hard to improve on that philosophy, but the general idea was all I was working on was my technique forever. That was all I would do. But then when
And
Robert and I
it
started,
sounds like,
yeah,
sorry to interrupt. It sounds like you were
yeah,
working on primarily how your technique looked.
yes, looked. That was it. Looked. Not even what it would do. It's seriously, it would. Wow. When I finally got to what I thought looked good, like I've got the video, I could pull it up and show you. When I finally got to what I thought looked good, the shot was not even that good. It was
Mm.
clunky. It was low. It was just not good. And I was obsessed with the kind of the vanity metric of how does this look on camera? How does this look compared to a line drawn on the screen?
Mm.
Or how does this compare to my friend who I think has a good looking swing?
Mm.
And that was the only way I would practice. And my measure of success was, is it looking better than it did
Mm.
yesterday?
Mm.
And if it wasn't, which it often didn't, right?
Mm.
Because that's hard to just do day to day, I would get really disappointed and lose motivation. So Robert introduced to me various different types of practice, not just block, rake, and hit practice, but he introduced things like changing clubs between shots, going through your routine, giving yourself a challenge to, I'm going to hit 18 shots at this target. I need to get 14 out of them within 20 feet or something. So he introduced, just let's change it up a little bit. And now we got into details of this percentage, this much of your time needs to be this. Okay, you've got 20 hours this week. Here's, this much time needs to be this.
Mm.
And based on your stats, your driving needs to be more and your short game is okay. So we don't need to put that much time to it.
Mm.
So he introduced the more of a breadth of practice rather than technique. That's all we care about. And let's perfect that. And then we'll try performing.
Mm.
It was let's slow down on your technique to ultimately speed up your improvement.
Mm.
Right. So it feels like I will get better quicker if I just focus on one thing and one thing only. But that would have meant I'm ignoring getting the ball in the hole.
Yeah.
And that's what I was ignoring for years.
Mm.
So he said, okay, let's focus on your technique. Sure. But let's not lose sight of what we're really doing here. We're trying to get the ball in the hole. So let's try to perform in our practice as much as possible within reason while we're still trying to work on your swing.
Mm. But that must have been a great incentive once you got going with that you could drill into certain areas and then you've got some numbers to show that statistically you're getting better at putting drives in fairways or greens in regular or whatever it may be.
Yeah. Yeah. We would, he had kind of a cohort of players that he works with, or back then he still does this in large part, but back then we would use a platform called Coach Now, and he would send out a message to all of us players and say, okay, this week's challenges are this, and this.
Right.
And he would send the same one to everybody.
Right.
He has since made it much more custom to each player, but
right.
We would kind of have a leaderboard because we would all comment on the post with, okay, my 175 approach challenge, I got 12 out of 18 within whatever.
Mm.
And that kind of custom approach every week allowed me to know this is what I'm doing on a week to week basis. And I'm comparing myself to other people. I'm getting instant feedback. And also the last time I did the 175 challenge, I only got 9 out of 18. Mm. This time I got 12. Mm. So seeing those numbers improvement or, lack of progress. Okay, Josh, you're still here. You're only hitting 6 out of 18. Yeah. We need to work on your approach shots from 150 to 175. So the numbers were a huge part of it.
But I think the gamification of it's great as well, as when you get other people involved. It's like the CrossFit. It's like the CrossFit mindset, isn't it? Of workout of the day and knowing scores from different people. But I think for folks listening, anybody listening, that through the winter time, if you could get even 2 of you, 3 of you, 4 of you, something like that, and you created a bit of a practice group where you don't have to necessarily all practice at the same time, but if there was some key metrics that you could identify, whether it's whatever it is, fairways or whatever, that then makes a real purpose to your practice, doesn't it? And it maybe is only 20 balls out of your practice, but there's some real engagement then.
Yeah, that's good, because then your practice has a purpose, and maybe you put it at the end of your practice to say, okay, I've got that challenge at the end of this practice, or at some point this week I need to do these 3 challenges, so I'm going to tailor my practice to do those really well. And then you're working on your game and then you're testing it. And that cadence of working on your game and testing it, that's the cadence that Robert introduced to me, where work really hard on your game in a diligent way, then go test it, whether it's in weekly challenges or it's in your kind of money game rounds during the week or your competition twice a month. All of those are tests of your practice and their feedback for what to continue to practice. But the cadence of practice, then test, practice, then test, that has, that's probably been the most lasting philosophy change on game improvement that has stuck with me, where used to it was all that matters was the tournament and practice was something I should be doing. So I had it upside down. But when I flipped it to say practice and improving and getting better as a golfer, that's the most important thing. And then the tournament is just a simple test of my game. That took a lot of pressure off. It allowed me to handle mistakes and failures way better. They weren't failures at that point. So having the kind of built-in gamified, here's your tests every week or every month or for the whole winter, that can give you the, okay, I'm not just practicing and just hitting balls. I'm doing it for a reason, and other people are going to see me, so I need to do it well. There's a little bit of pressure there too. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. In many ways, I think it's for a lot of golfers who are really serious about the game and really want to sort of compete at a higher level. It's almost making that leap and making that commitment to make practice more difficult, so that you can actually be a bit easier on yourself in tournaments. That you know, ultimately, if you've done everything you can in your practice, the number's going to be the number in a tournament, isn't it? It's going to be whatever it is. But I think I certainly fell into this trap of thinking that quantity and how it looked and all the rest of it was important. When all of those things, not saying they're irrelevant, but they're close to irrelevant compared to really sort of measurable stuff in practice that's tough and hard to do. Because it's a lot easier just to stand there and smash 50 balls in the range and think you've had a good session, as opposed to noting things down. But if you're practicing that way and then go into the tournament, whatever happens, then you've given the best you can of yourself that week, haven't you?
Yes, that's knowing that I am just changing it up between block practice, challenge practice, randomized, going through my routine, just the knowledge that I have put in time that was variable has taught my brain the ability to flip the switch on and off. Because when you go to the course, like you said, the number's probably going to be what the number is. Your game is in large part uncontrollable at that point. It's kind of been decided of what your game is for that day. And you might wake up and feel crappy and have a sore neck, and your game is nothing like it was in practice. So that's why it's incredibly important to be able to flip off the technical brain part and turn on the playing brain part. I think that switch that you have to flip, I think that's a trained skill to go from, okay, I'm hitting balls, working on my swing for 15 minutes. The timer goes off, literally a timer, and you switch to, okay, now it's time to hit randomized approach shots or something, where I'm not working on my swing anymore. I'm actively deciding to leave that in the past, and I am just hitting random shots, going through my routine, seeing if I can get the ball close. So that having to switch your brain from technical to randomized or performance mode within a minute is really powerful mental training, I think, for, okay, it's tournament time. I have worked on switching my technical brain off dozens of times, so I can more easily do it when it's time to show up and play in a tournament. I can let myself just play instead of being lured into thinking about my swing or working on my game the whole time while I'm playing a tournament.
And I think within that, when you do your practice, I think location is huge, isn't it? I think it's not always easy to do this, but if you can go from one form of practice, the block practice, and literally change locations, go to a different part of the range, or just change stations or whatever, there's a spatial signal to your brain then that we are now doing something different.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Your brain needs needs to train the context
Yeah,
shifts, right?
yeah,
If the only time you ever work on do your routine is when you're in a tournament, your brain will realize, oh, something's really important here now. We need to, okay, now is the time to really show up and be intense and focused, and kind of sends us into that kind of threat detection mode. But if you are regularly training that of, okay, I can jump into pre-shot routine mode at any point, whether it's over on the chipping green or putting green or on the range, or definitely when I'm on the course playing casual golf, your brain recognizes, oh, wait, this is just what we do at any point, right? Our routine is just who we are. So when you show up in a tournament, and of course you go through your routine when you're in a tournament, it almost feels like, oh wait, I'm just at home, right? This is what I normally do. This is just who I am. I go through my routine before I hit a golf ball. And that kind of association your brain makes with routine means I'm at home. Routine means I'm just doing my thing. That's a very important kind of recognition for your brain to have of what a routine is.
I think there was I think I mentioned this before on the podcast, that one of the real successes in British sport in the last sort of 20 years has been cycling. British cycling have won incredible amounts of medals at Olympics, and I'm pretty sure that I heard somewhere that one of the mantras that they had was that it's just another day in Manchester, in the sense that they did all the training at the velodrome in Manchester. But the deal was that the training in Manchester, a lot of it was exactly as we were talking about. It was intense, it was focused, it was simulating exactly what was going to happen in Beijing or Los Angeles or wherever it was, where the Olympic Games was or World Championships was. So it's exactly the same principle. It's just another day in Manchester, metaphorically. We've done all of this before, so what I'm doing in a tournament is just an extension of what I do on a regular basis. So, as you say, our brain is always searching for or being aware of threat, isn't it? If the golf course is occurring as a non-threatening place, then we can express closer to capability then.
That's right. Yeah, we can access our skills that we have been training. And that's why the cadence of practice and then test is, I think, so vital, and what so many people have backwards. Because if your cycling example was, okay, yeah, we work hard, and I don't know what cycling practice is, but if we work hard, we just ride a bike a lot. If we cycle really really intensely in competitions, but then in practice we just kind of ho hum, do our thing, have a good time, let's enjoy ourselves, and enjoyment might be the top priority. Well, then you show up to the competition, and it's your brain knows this is a competition and it's important to you, but you've done nothing to prepare yourself how to handle the important pressure packed thing. So your brain says, whoa, this is different. This is scary. What's going on here? Why does this feel so important? So let's clam up. Let's tense all our muscles to be ready to fight this threat or fly away from this threat. And then we're not, like you said, expressing our ability because we're too caught up avoiding what we're afraid of.
Yeah.
So if you show your brain systematically over time that it's not actually scary, there's no actual real threat here, because playing golf, playing a tournament is simply just a test of your ability. It's not a threat or an indictment on you as a person or as a golfer. It's just a test of your ability. And you've been working really, really hard, and you've seen these, you've exposed yourself to this difficulty, these so-called threats repeatedly, and showed your brain, wait, I can handle this. It's not a threat after all. If I fail, it hurts for a sec, but it's not ultimate. It's not ultimate
Not
failure.
life
It's
or death.
not, it doesn't bring me down completely. It's not life or death.
Mm,
So that exposure over time, combined with the philosophy that competitions are just a test,
mm,
that those two combined, those two mentalities combined, kind of turn you into a bulletproof golfer,
mm,
because now you can experience anything and you're okay. You're not shaken. You can experience what would have used to be termed as failure, and you would just see it as, okay, that's just something that happens when I play golf.
mm,
And that happens when I practice too. So it's actually not that crazy of a
mm.
thing to happen. And that's a pretty powerful place to be.
Yeah. I think that quest of changing the reference that the brain has from threat to opportunity might be the single most
Yes.
important thing to do, in my opinion. From then, from that with Robert, then in those early days, Josh, in
Mm.
terms of your development in coaching the mental side of the game, what were the things, the influences that you found most useful and beneficial that you perhaps learned from other people that you know utilize with the
Mm.
clients that you work with?
Yeah. And uh, practice planning is a huge one. The kind of bigger picture perspective on golf's importance in your life
Mm,
is a huge one. And then that those kind of philosophies combined with, I've kind of self-taught myself uh kind of psychology, and looking at scientific papers and reading the kind of pillar psychology books and whatever. So all of that combined to say, okay, yes, we need to have a perspective that golf is only so important to us, but there's kind of psychological reasons why, because our brain perceives threats and wants to help us survive. So when we have this perception that golf is the be all end all and golf is life or death, then our brain, this is what mode your brain will put you
mm,
in when that happens. So the the perspective shift from golf is all that matters to golf is just one piece of me, of my whole pie, of my whole life,
mm.
then that piece of pie can be going terribly and I'll be okay.
Yeah.
And that puts me into a better frame while I'm playing, puts me into a better frame of, okay, practice. I don't need to be feeling great about how golf is going to be motivated to practice. I just practice, right? That's just what I do. I just work hard on my game, and I try to get better no matter how this part of my pie is going.
Mm,
So that leads to, I think, tremendous freedom while
mm,
you're playing, and just holding results more loosely, right? Results can be great or terrible, and either one is okay.
yeah.
So that kind of philosophy has probably been the biggest thing that I try to impart onto
Mm.
players. But it's, there's like every player brings their own kind of history and baggage to, okay, why does golf
Means so much.
make me so upset?
Yeah.
Yeah, it means so much. Exactly.
Mm,
Everyone has their own reasons for that. I have my own reasons, and trying to impress my parents to get validation from them,
mm,
that kind of thing. And that turns out that tends to be a lot of people's
yeah.
kind of why golf is, or why performing well in general, but golf brings this out of us. Why performing well in golf is so vital to us is um, a lot of times parent child
Yeah. Driven.
interaction.
Mm,
So that's something I try to help my clients with without pretending to be a therapist, because I am not. I've
yeah.
just had therapy and learned about it, but I am
Mm,
not. So that's a big one. That's
mm,
absolutely a big one.
mm. And I think also these days the element, the influence of social media, everything. I do feel for today's younger players, as I've often said, when I was a kid, if you
Mm.
played bad in a tournament, there's only those other people who played in the tournament who knew about it. Nowadays, literally everything is exposed. You can find out what anybody's doing in any tournament. it's so
Yeah.
available, and kids these days are very aware of that, aren't they? They're very you know, they do well and they get 100 likes on whatever it is, and the silence metaphorically if they don't
Mhm.
do so good. So I think that
Yep.
is another issue that's challenging.
Yeah. Yeah. We live for that kind of dopamine hit of the likes or the views. So we put extra pressure on ourselves to perform well so that we will get that dopamine hit in return. And the extra pressure that you're adding to yourself makes you play worse. So you don't get the dopamine hit
Mm.
of playing well or the likes and views and people's adulation, adoration, whatever.
Both.
So none of you don't you don't get any of that.
Yeah.
And so then you double down and strive even harder to get those results, to get all of those things, and make yourself play even worse. And you end up burning yourself out doing that because you're constantly striving for something that you can't really control. You're basing your entire existence on controlling something that you can't control.
Mm. And ultimately, our brain gets to the point where it says, I actually don't like this activity called golf anymore. I'm going to find
Yeah,
something else to do, because we're either
right.
moving towards or moving away, moving away from pain towards pleasure, aren't we? That's a big driver
Right.
for the
Yep.
brain. Give me some examples, Josh. I know people who listen like this. So let's take um, three areas of the game. Give me one of your favorite putting games, drills,
Mm.
approaches that you found useful for people to test their capabilities on the greens.
Yeah, so I keep it really boring. I don't have a bunch of fun stuff that I do. It really can be boiled down to what Robert would have always called an 18 shot challenge. It was
Mm,
always let's hit 18 shots to this target and measure what you do. So for putting, that would be okay, this week we're hitting 18 random 8-footers. And the goal is to get um, 10 out of 18, to make 10 out of 18.
mm,
And he would say, okay, hit 6 putts to one hole, random breaks,
mm,
random whatever, uphill, downhill, side hill, and do 6 to that one, do 6 to another hole, and do 6 to a third hole. Measure your progress, go through your routine every time. And okay, I only got 7 out of 18. And he would do some calculation that would say, okay, well, that means your strokes gained on that one was this. And he would work hard to really help us understand, put our put our performance in context. But then approach or if we worked our way up, that was putting. Short game challenge would be okay. Let's hit 18 shots from 20 yards in a fairway lie, one ball. Right,
mm,
you're not standing in the same place. You have one ball. You toss it or drop it in a place that's around 20 yards away. You hit it, and the challenge was okay. You've got to get uh, you know, whatever, 13 out of 18 within 5 feet or something.
mm,
So do that 18 shots, random places all around, 20 yards in the fairway. Approach shots, 18 shots to 175. You got to get in with this. Driving, 18. We might do 14 drives or something
yeah,
because you
yeah,
typically only have 14 drives on the course. But 14 drives, and he would say, hold out your fingers and make a fairway. So he would say for a tight fairway, use your pointer finger and your middle finger spread apart into a V. And then for a wide fairway, he would say pointer finger, pinky spread apart
mm,
into a V, and hold that at arm's length, and you would get the width of a fairway. So he would sometimes say, okay, wide fairway challenge
mm,
and narrow fairway challenge. We're doing both. On the wide one, you got to get 11 out of 14. On the narrow one, you got to get 9 out of 14 or whatever.
mm,
And we'd log all that every week. And I think he would do one challenge from each of those 4 categories every week. And so that's a pretty good kind of approximation for people to say, okay, I want to challenge my game regularly, all
mm,
parts of my game regularly. And maybe it's weekly, maybe it's monthly, depending on how much time you can spend. I wouldn't have the time to be able to do 4 different challenges every week. But that that was really it. It was
Mhm.
boring. It wasn't like whatever other exciting thing you could do.
Well, I actually don't think it is boring because it's first of all,
Mm,
it's effective, but I think it's a great number to go with, isn't it? 18 shots.
yeah,
It's very specific, and each time you do it, you know it's really relative to the game itself. So I think,
right. Takes about 15 minutes.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
nice, and
you
it's a
know,
nice
you
amount.
really engage with all of those shots.
Yes.
So, um,
Another example? You asked me what would be, can you think of something that instead of just hitting 18 shots to a target, what's another challenge that you could think of?
I mean, the one that I sort of used an awful lot for the short game is par 18. You know, there's not
Mm.
many things I would claim to have invented, but I definitely think I was the one who first came up with that. You know, that you go to the
Oh,
short
nice.
game area and you play 9 different shots from 9 different locations, 3 easy, 3 medium, 3 difficult. You chip on and your par is 18, and you see how close you can get to that par. But I've always the nuance of par 18 is make sure that you play the golf ball that you would play a tournament in. Make sure that if you take your glove off when you normally literally do everything. Par 18 is a
Yeah.
complete simulation of the game itself.
Yes.
So that
Yeah. So
you
you're
know,
putting out after the chip. Is
yeah, you,
that?
you, you, you,
Yeah.
you you chip on, you walk up, you mark it, you do everything that you do, you take your glove off if that's what you normally do. So literally everything. And after each
Mm,
hole, you have to mark it on a scorecard. So in 15, 20 minutes of par 18, you get in a microcosm of the game itself.
mm. Yeah.
Another
I that
another one I
Yeah.
love as well is with I usually use 10 drivers, is
Mhm.
get somebody to hit 10 drives to a narrower fairway, quite a narrow fairway, 25 yards, perhaps say 25 yards wide.
Mhm.
And what they would do is they have to hit a shot, but then when they've hit the shot, they've got to walk away from the station, walk around for at least a minute or so, and then come back.
Mm.
So you literally every tee shot, you walk
Spaced
away,
out.
you come back. But then the magic numbers are 7 and 3, in the sense that if you start off with a 25-yard fairway and you only get 3 out of 10 next time, you make it a little bit bigger, you make it 10% bigger.
Yeah.
If you get seven
Yeah.
or better, you make it 10% narrower. So it's a
Yep.
sliding game. The better that you get, the harder it becomes each time. So
Yeah. That's
again, that's
good.
a great competitive game to play. But it seems to be that for a lot of players, the actual walking away from the shot to then have to come
That's
back,
hard.
it's hard, but it really does make a difference if you're doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's like you said, and it sounds like all of these are more even another level of simulating what it's actually like to play on a golf course. And I like the one where you dynamically change the width of the fairway, because when you when you want to improve your game or improve at anything, you want to make it just outside your comfort zone to where you kind of you succeed, 6 or 7 times out of 10 and fail 3 or 4 times. That kind of ratio, you want to succeed a little bit more than you fail to kind of keep you going, but also it needs to be challenging enough to where you're failing um, often, but not so often that you say, I can't do
Get
this, I can never do
disappointed.
this.
Yeah.
So right, when you get to 7 or 8 out of 10, oh, that's too easy, right? You need to make it harder. Okay, I'm only getting 5 or 6 out of 10 into this fairway. This is my sweet spot. I need to get to where this one is 7 or 8 out of 10. Then I can narrow it down. That's good. I like the dynamic one. We never did dynamically changing ones like that. I can think of one where, um, I think it's called maybe like a drawback drill or something. So you chip, maybe it's a short game one. You chip it, and if you if you don't get it within 5 feet, you got to bring it back to 10 feet, or you got to double the length of it or something. And so it really adds pressure to, I got to get this within. It rewards really good shots, but it penalizes not great shots. So there's an added element of pressure and dynamic nature to it. So those are definitely good that I never really did, but I think would have added pressure and made things more challenging. Yeah, those are good.
I think with the dynamic one as well is that when you get close to, let's say you've got 6 out of 9 in the 25-yard
Mm,
fairway, and you wanting to get to the 7, the magic number, then that last tee shot really does mean
that last
something
one.
because it's you've got promotion, if you like, or
Yep.
however you frame it. I remember another one,
Yep. That's good.
a great one, certainly for better players on the green, would be the 5 under challenge, where you go on the green with one ball and you're playing lots of different holes from random distances, and every hole's a par two again, and you try and get to
Mhm.
5 under, or whatever the number you choose. It could be 2 under,
Sure.
5 under, whatever it is relative to your ability. But you set a number, let's say 5 under. You're trying to get to it as soon as possible. If you three putt, you've got to start over again. But once you get to 5 under, then the next two putts you've got to hit two 30-foot plus putts and you've got to two put those to get in the clubhouse. So again, it's a great simulation that
Mm.
you've got a good score going and you've got to finish out the
Yep.
last couple of holes, and you might be faced with a couple of
Yeah.
30 footers to get in with to get into the
Yes.
clubhouse with
To
two
to
pars.
close it out.
Yeah.
That's good. I love that. And anything you can do to simulate, I need to do this
Mm,
to get this.
yes.
You simulate the need or the kind of have to feeling, which there's a conversation we had of once you get into the tournament, realizing I don't need to do anything, right?
Yeah.
That's that kind of bigger picture perspective to take off pressure. But if you're regularly encountering that in practice, then it doesn't feel that outrageous when you play. I've done this dozens of times where I felt like I needed to do something and I did it, or I didn't do
Mm,
it. I failed. And I learned, okay, that stings a little bit, but I'm okay.
mm,
It's really kind of not tricking, teaching your brain that what I used to think was failure and was life or death is actually okay,
mm,
right? I can experience this and I'll be okay. Therefore, I'm not anticipatory about what that failure might mean or how painful that failure might be.
mm,
So you're not always living in this fear of some anticipated failure. You're able to say, bring whatever happens, bring it on,
yeah.
and I can handle it.
Yeah.
That's strength. That's mental strength right there.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe the anthem for all golfers should be the old Gloria Gaynor song, "I Will Survive." Maybe that should be the anthem that
Yeah.
runs through.
Yeah.
But it's true,
Sure.
isn't it? That I will be okay, whatever happens. I will survive.
Yes. 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 And that is, we know that's true on a logical basis, but in the moment,
Yeah.
our everything in us tells us that that's not true
Yeah.
unless you train yourself and teach yourself that it is true. You expose yourself to what used to be life or death failures and showing yourself, wait, that's actually that it's painful.
Yeah.
It sucks, but I'm okay,
I'm okay.
right? Truly,
Dealt
I'm
with it.
okay.
Yeah.
And then the next time it's you feel that it's about to happen, you can credibly tell yourself, okay, that can happen and I will be okay. I know it from experience. I know it's going to be okay, even if that happens. So that allows you to play with freedom rather than always looking out for the thing that you need to avoid and playing scared and swinging guidey. You could free up and say, you know what, I could hit this out of bounds. That would be disappointing, but I'm okay. Like it's actually okay. I'll be all right. I'll add a couple shots to my score, but I'm okay. I've done this before. I've
Yeah.
experienced this. It's okay.
And these are not platitudes, are they? We're not pretending. We're not pretending it's not important. It's the perception to the brain and how the brain reacts
Right.
to these perceived threats. Because
Perceived
perceived
threats.
threat. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's well said. Yep.
Yeah. Josh, fascinating conversation. I think there's been a good few things for people to think about and structure the practice, especially in this part of the world where we're entering into the winter months and making the most out of the time at the range.
Mm.
Let everybody know where they can find out about your practice plans and the work that you do, and especially
Hmm.
the podcast, which I think you do a great job on that. So where can people find
Oh,
out about you?
yeah. Yeah, thank you. I guess the one place, if I could send everybody, would be the Mental Golf Show podcast. And right after you finish listening to your podcast, head on over to the Mental Golf Show. Uh, Certainly listen to Karl first, because he's way smarter than me. He's got way more experience, way better players he's ever worked with. So he knows what he's talking about. But then come on over to mine if you want. Actually had Karl on last a couple episodes ago, and an awesome two-parter. He was amazing. Tons of great feedback on it. So if you want kind of the most from me, it would be the Mental Golf Show podcast. And like you said, I sell a practice plan. That's one of the products that I sell. If you want to find that or learn more about me, you can go to joshnicholsgolf.com. That's kind of where you can access anything that I do. So those two places, Mental Golf Show podcast and joshnicholsgolf.com. That would be it.
Right. All right, Josh, that was wonderful. Really enjoyed that conversation. Thanks ever so much for your time.
Likewise.
I'm sure we'll do it again on both shows.
Of course, Karl. I appreciate it. This has been a real pleasure.